First order of business, call the roll.
Commissioner Dodd? Here. Commissioner Davidson?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Boyd?
Here.
Commissioner Irvin? Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Chairman McAdoo?
Here,
We have a quorum.
approval of the minutes, Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I've read the minutes and find them to be in order. The only problem is we haven't solved all the world problems yet, but they are in order.
Okay, do I have a
And I move
motion?
to approve.
Second.
Motion and second in discussion. All those in favor? All right, okay. Next on the agenda, 20 North update. Adam?
Good evening, Commissioners. 20 North, the window replacement project is ongoing. The contractor has resumed work this week. He will continue through next week. At this time, all the windows have been replaced. The contractor has started addressing our punch list. I'm still communicating. We touched on this last week. We've had a few issues with some of the windows, which is to be expected. We're working through those issues. I'm staying in contact with various employees throughout the building. Next week, we should start toward the finishing, complete the finishing of the caulk and the paint and some of our cleanup work. So the contractor anticipates that we should be complete on that job by December the 30th.
Questions? Hey, next on the agenda, one-stop update.
Quick question.
Oh, okay.
Are we
Commissioner
on
Irvin?
budget? Where are we? In terms of, are we right on budget, over, under,
Oh, the budget was bid out. It's a fixed amount.
fixed price contract?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions? Okay, next on the agenda, one-stop update.
This project continues to track fairly well on schedule, considering the weather. The fascia boards, we've spoke about that last month. Those materials and other related roofing materials, they're on site now, and they have begun the installation of those materials, as you can see there from the pic. The masonry and the window installation is now complete. Interior walls are ongoing. Interior doors and glass ongoing. There's a picture of one of the entrances. The exterior siding is ongoing. I estimate the siding to be at roughly 50% at this time. The gas line installation is ongoing. Contractor anticipates that to be tied up within the next 7 to 10 days. Site grading is also ongoing, and I have some pictures of some of that various forming. It's on the rear of the building where the mechanical equipment. There's another view. And to the DMV. So we started this area obviously later than we did the clerk's office, so we have resumed work now. The plumbing rough-in is complete. I know you can't really tell clearly, but the plumbing, the electrical rough-in is complete. The sprinkler line is in. The HVAC duct is in. So we're awaiting inspections. We anticipate those inspections to be tied up within the next 7 to 10 days, and the contractor will look to pour slab. That's probably a better view. It's not a large area, so it's not going to be time-consuming to complete. There's the front entrance. That'll touch on some of that fascia that they were waiting on. Oh. There's the siding. That's a pre-finished masonry. It's a hardy board material. It comes pre-finished. It's a really nice product. I wanted y'all to see kind of the color variation there from the exterior, and that you're looking at the drive-through. So that completes my report on One Stop.
Okay, any questions on One Stop?
Is there an anticipated opening date? Spring?
We're here in March, so we're not terribly behind.
Staffing, Mr. Chairman, is staffed? Are we looking at staffing, or I know we've had trouble filling some positions countywide. I just wondered if we're having any difficulty in staffing that building.
Staffing that building is left up to Lisa back there, and I don't anticipate no problem on staffing, but you got any questions on staffing, I'll bring up. Okay? Mr. Johnson?
Will this drive-through accommodate like 2 cars at a time? Is it a double?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I'm just curious what all will be available in this facility? What services? I'm sorry.
It's my understanding that it's a full-service center. Everything that is offered here at the 319 location will be offered at that facility as well.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Johnson?
does this include like a tax office like is in Smyrna where you can pay your taxes?
It's a separate department.
Right, but I know we have one in Smyrna at that office. I was just wondering if it was incorporated.
Yeah. Can we suspend rules? I have motion to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
All those in favor? Can you come up and
Mr. Beatty and I have discussed him having the same services at the new Blackman office that we currently have in Smyrna, and he chose not to have that. He feels like there's enough services, you know, here and by mail that he didn't need a space in that office. So no, that won't be there. The services that will be allowed, or that we will be presiding at the new Blackman office, will be the same as what we have at 319, but basically what we did was we modeled the Blackman office after the Smyrna office. So what the Smyrna office offers will be the same. There will be some differences. There's so many more car dealerships out by the new Blackman office. Of course, we'll have a larger car dealership department at the new Blackman office than we do in Smyrna, and probably even in Murfreesboro at the 319. I call it the main office. And just as far as staffing, I'm glad you asked. I have so many applications when I put it out there. What we're seeing with staffing as far as the county and even other county clerks across the state is we can hire people and we can train them. But the longevity of employment now is much shorter than it was back even when I took a job and looked for a place to retire. The generations that are coming after us, I believe I read an article, and the longevity is 5 to 7 years. So I do have plenty of applications, but staffing is not a problem. But keep in mind, the turnover and why it happens. We're also competing with people working from home. So I have lost some of the staff due to that, but we have no problem replacing. Another thing that is in top priority for me is we have a large Spanish-speaking community. So it is my obligation to have people that speak Spanish in all locations. So that is a priority, and I'm having success with that as well. So I'm excited about the Blackman office. Just to chime in a little bit, I did tour it week before last, and it seems to be coming along real nicely. The layout is what we will need there. The space is so needed, and those that toured the office today will understand the waiting area is much larger than we have in 319 and in Smyrna. So I feel like it's going to accommodate and fill what we need out there at this time. So I can answer anything else if you got any questions.
Mr. Johnson?
You mentioned it's modeled after Smyrna. Will you have the glass like we had put in at Smyrna for the safety of our employees?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I'm glad to see that that's happening too. So, yeah. All right. Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you. Call the committee back in session. Adam?
Commissioner, does that complete the report on Blackman?
Yes. Anybody got any more questions on Blackman? One stop? If not, next on the agenda, Public Health and Safety Buildings update.
Commissioners, we'll start the report with Rockville. So last month, I notified you of some delays associated with glass shortages. I got news this week at the OAC that the new projected delivery date for that glass to the site is expected now at January the 4th, and that's a couple of weeks sooner than originally projected, so maybe some of those delays won't be as bad as we once thought. So the roof is now dried in at 100%. The fascia and soffit are ongoing. The masonry siding is ongoing. I estimated that the siding at about 50% complete now. The sprinkler line inspections are complete. We're awaiting the electrical and the plumbing inspections for the overhead. The interior walls are at roughly 90%. They're mudding. We're looking at a final sand, prep, and paint probably within the next 2 weeks. The ceiling grid is in, so it's 100%, and they'll start laying those tiles as soon as we get our finals inspections. The interior concrete floors are 100% on the grinding, roughly 50% on polishing. The contractor estimates that the epoxy finish, the finish coat, will be after the first of the year, pending weather. So, site concrete is ongoing. They did make 2 large pours recently, so now you have your 2 front, your entrance and your exit. They're now poured and covered for weather. There's another view. That's the rear. So you can see that they've got a significant amount of that siding completed. So. The site concrete that we're talking about right now, that's roughly at 80%, and they anticipate asphalt work mid-January. So we're still shooting for that end of January. We haven't ruled that out yet for occupancy. And that completes my report on the Rockville Public Health and Safety. Some interior pictures from one of the bays. I believe that's over on the EMS side.
Any questions on Rockville? Bergen?
There was discussion, there has been discussion about some of the budget aspects and things along those lines. And I'm trying to get a handle on any studies that may have been done indicating kind of priority of need of the different public safety and health buildings. I know there was discussion in public safety that I have not had a chance to watch the video yet. I glanced at the minutes. And I'm trying to get a sense for the buildings and kind of the relative need and priority. I don't know if you were able to attend public safety.
Are you referring to the locations?
Well, yes, that's the relative need and et cetera. But I'm trying to also get a sense, because there have been questions raised about the cost already in the budget meeting, for those of you who are able to watch that. Not sure how much we want to get into that here, but I'm trying to get a sense for any kind of study that was done that would give us a sense for, you know, gotta have this one, gotta have not have some others as quickly. Not saying cut, just saying relative need.
Mayor.
Mr. Chairman. So the study that was done with regard to the public safety buildings and their location was done prior to the appropriation of the money from the ARPA funds. And so that study was done based on the maximum effect those public safety buildings would provide the community as it related generally to how we could best serve the community in response times from those locations to the community. And secondarily, what kind of financial benefit, real financial benefit, would those locations provide homeowners in the reduction of their homeowners insurance policy? And so currently, we're at an ISO 5 standard right now countywide. It's projected, according to Chief Farley, that when all of these public safety buildings come online and become operational, it'll reduce from ISO 5 to an ISO 3. Currently, the city of Murfreesboro is an ISO 1, which is the lowest you can be. So an ISO 3 for Rutherford County as a goal is a very realistic but laudable goal, quite honestly. So there are two great benefits, and the study was done before the financing took place. That's to answer your question about the study. The second piece of this about the financing, initially, their first 5 buildings, which were Rockville, in this order, Rockville, Kittrell, Walter Hill, Las Casas, and then Christiana, were going to be paid for with ARPA funds. Those ARPA funds, we estimated each building out of those ARPA funds was going to be about $7.2 million, plus or minus. And subsequent to that, and because of inflation, cost of labor, we have found that since we have built these first 2 in Rockville and Kittrell, we have found an increase of about $1.3 to $1.4 million for each subsequent for the next 2, which would be Walter Hill and Christiana. And then we'll probably, Walter Hill and Las Casas, forgive me. So with Christiana being number 5. So what public safety did the other night was they recommended that we pause, that's a very important word, pause the financing for Del Webb, which was not ARPA funds, which is public safety building number 6, and move those funds from the Del Webb account to offset the deficit that was created as a result of inflation for Walter Hill and Las Casas. That is not a delay of Del Webb, just a pause so we can find out how we're going to finance it, because Del Webb was being financed internally without ARPA funds. So it gave, because it was the last one to come online, it gave us some time and some flexibility. And so I'm happy to report that since that meeting, Michael Smith and I have actually come up with an idea that we're currently working on, and I'll certainly share it with this body at the appropriate time, where that facility will not be delayed. And I think that's very, very important. So, and I have to give a lot of credit to our finance director. Gentlemen, ladies, he's absolutely splendid. He really is, and we work extremely well together. But having said that, we think we've got an answer that this body is going to appreciate, but give us a little bit more time to get the details, because I want to have all the answers to your questions when that time comes, but it's coming quite soon. I hope that answers your two questions, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you.
Questions? Davis?
I just had one. Is there a place to see the actual plans for, like, when it's built, what the inside will hold, and was it built with future growth in mind? I know you're putting, public safety in there, and as the areas continue to populate, was it built for growth? It's just kind of in the back of my head.
The answer to that, Commissioner, is absolutely it was. And I can tell you that, as a matter of fact, that was a big part of the reason why the very first public safety building come online was in Rockvale. It hit the trifecta of need, growth, and affordability. And so that was the first one to come online, and I think Commissioner Reed will tell you that's why, and that is in fact the case. So the answer is yes. But again, and I want to say, don't presume that when we complete the Del Webb facility, which will be the last of these 6, that completes the task of providing comprehensive first response through our public safety buildings. I can absolutely see an argument after we get this done to move up more toward the northwestern part of the county in a very facilitated way, because that's where a lot of growth is taking place. So I don't imagine we'll be stopping at 6. This is just where we got started because of the ARPA money, if that makes sense.
Any other questions?
How much is it ARPA?
Commissioner Irvin?
Oh, sorry. How much, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much original ARPA, is that the word, money was there, and how much is remaining in that pot?
Mike, Michael Smith, our finance director, specifically asked me tonight, he said, Mayor, is there any reason for me to come tonight? And I said, absolutely not. I think we can cover this. You've now asked a question where I wish you were here. So I'm gonna guess this as best as I can. I believe it was about $64 million in 2 tranches. And there was a part of that a significant part of that we used to pay bonuses and salary increases to county employees. And then the balance of that was used, I think about $36 to $40 million. My numbers may be roughed in a little bit, but $36 to $40 million was allocated towards these public safety buildings, making up the $64 million. And Commissioner Phillips may have more accurate numbers than that.
Commissioner Reed's back there if we need to bring him forward.
That's right. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 36 million bucks for those 6 buildings. Right, Pettis?
Thank you. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner, if you want the exact numbers, we will be glad to get those to you, and down to the penny.
Thank you. I'll look forward to looking at some numbers.
Commissioner Reed, you got anything to add to it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you talk about these buildings, I've always got something to add. I've lived with these buildings for almost 4 years. The numbers that we've given here is pretty much on target. 36 million is what we started, but just to say, when you're talking about what they cost, we originally looked at these buildings at $4 million apiece when we originally started out. And to give you some idea of how the locations were set up, if you take the palm of your hand, which looks somewhat like Rutherford County, if you took a look at it, they're somewhat in a circle. That's the way they're set up, and they were designed that way primarily to give service to citizens all around Murfreesboro. And with our EMS system, where it's not going out, it's going into Murfreesboro whenever help is needed there to work with the traffic and what we have to do there. But that's you're pretty much on target with your numbers that are there. And when you ask about a plan you could see, if it had been about a year ago, I would have had one with me because I had a notebook that I carried them everywhere I went. And I've talked to everything from school children to senior citizens' homes, showing them these plans of what they will look like and how they will be operated. They are designed for growth. They're designed for working with our communities out there. They not only contain fire or EMS, they also contain an office for our sheriff's department. And I think what you showed there was the mezzanine in one of your pictures there. They have a 16 square foot mezzanine in every one of these buildings where they are designed for our public health. And inside of those mezzanines, there is a refrigerated area that's designed for serums and things of that type where we get into pandemics again, we can vaccinate within those communities. And we'll be working with our public health system. That's why they are so named. They're not called the fire station at Rockville or the EMS station at Kittrell or whatever. They are a public health and safety buildings are what they're called, and they're designed that way. Just this past weekend, I was out in the Eagleville area talking to a group of seniors, and one of them told me, said, you know, I'd go in and get the flu shot at the health department, but I don't want to go into the city of Murfreesboro to do that. I said, what would it be if we had one out here? Oh, I'd go to that. I said, well, you're going to have one. So I think it will benefit our seniors where they will feel like they're going back to a community health department, somewhat like Smyrna or anywhere else. They're going to have that opportunity once again in these 6 areas to do so, and that's what they're designed for. And, you know, like I said, we started out with $4 million for each one of these. It went to 6, and then when we finally got ready to build them, it jumped to the 7, the magic 7 number. And I think it was called time, it was called the economy in what we had here, it was called change of administration, it's called anything you want to call it, it's just said that the price went up. And I think that's what we're seeing now. It's just the change of things and what we're having to deal with, getting supplies, getting windows, and whatever we got to do. But as I've said all along for this continued time, it's going to happen. And that's what we're working at. And I'll answer any questions any of you might have.
Question, Commissioner Dodd?
So we have funding for 4.5 buildings. Is
what we've got right now?
36 million.
Right now, from what the public safety is sending on to budget right now, we voted the other night, is for 5 right now. And now we're getting information that the 6th one will be coming online too.
The 36 million won't cover the 5th building. Have we talked about the shortfall there? Have we gotten that specific at budget level?
We have full funding for the first 5.
First 5.
But that was at a number less than 7.2 and now 8.6. The first 4 cost 31.6 million. That leaves 4.4 million, which won't pay for the 5th building. So I just want to make sure we're talking about that.
So, Commissioner, I'm not arguing with your math, okay? What I'm stressing here is that my numbers may not be exact. What I'm telling you with all certainty, as of tonight, we have 5 buildings funded through our ARPA funds.
Thank you.
Okay? There is the 6th building, which was Del Webb, was funded internally out of the general fund from Rutherford County. Okay, and the reason we did that 6th building is because that land was donated by the Del Webb development community. So we thought, based on that donation, I think it was 2 acres, if I'm not mistaken, or thereabouts, that it made sense because of its location on Highway 96 west of the city, that it was an excellent location, but it would be the 6th one, and we would finance that one internally. Because our ARPA funds are fixed, now we have a cost overrun, we are now having to pull from Del Webb, which is Rutherford County financing, and supplement that with the ARPA funds that we have to make up the shortfall. So with that makeup, we do have 5 buildings that will be funded completely. And we're working on the reestablishment of the funding for the Del Webb.
Gotcha. And so part of the funding for the 5th is bringing tax dollars out of the 6th building.
Yes.
To supplement, so the free money ended
And we have till 2026. We have
inflation.
till 2026 to spend this ARPA money. So we've got a little while to spend it, but we don't want to wait that long because obviously the cost of construction's going up, right? And
Sure.
So we want to get going on the rest of these. So because every day that we wait is another day that it costs more.
And the fifth building,
In Christiana.
the free money was supplemented with general fund money from the sixth building. We raised up to the fifth. So there's general fund money in the fifth building. Is that correct?
Not exactly. And since we're on this point, let's be exactly correct as I understand it, okay? Because this is important.
And I know the numbers won't, I understand but
remember it was the next two that are coming online are Las Casas and Walter Hill. And so the commission takes the ARPA money and funds each one of those separately. So we have a funding mechanism for each one of those. We have a shortfall now in each one of those next two that we need to make up for. Does that make sense? And so we're pulling the Del Webb money out to make up for the deficit that's going to occur with Las Casas and Walter Hill, if that makes sense.
it does. And the Del Webb.
Because they're each appropriated separately in two different separate contracts.
And the Del Webb money was general fund
Correct.
money.
That's
The
correct.
general fund money is being lifted out of the Del Webb to pay for,
To supplement the others.
to supplement
Yes, sir.
the free money, the
Yes, sir.
federal money that
Yes,
came
sir.
down.
Yes, sir. The ARPA money. That is correct.
Well, tax dollars are going into Building 5.
Sorry?
Local tax dollars, local tax revenue, fund balance, whatever, is going into Building 5. And then a creative way to do number 6 and finish number 5, I suppose, is forthcoming.
It is our full expectation that we will get all 5 built with the ARPA money and some of that Del Webb money, and then it's our responsibility to make sure that we find the money to finish Del Webb, which we have time to do. And I believe we have an excellent idea. I'm quite honestly pretty excited about it.
Okay, Commissioner Phillips?
I look at it similar to what we do for the educational building. We borrow from one to start another project, and that's in essence what we're doing right here. We're borrowing from Del Webb, and we'll replace that when it comes time to build Del Webb. And I think that's 4 years off, 3.5 years off.
Three years, but that's what Commissioner Phillips is saying is absolutely exactly correct. We're not doing anything different than what the school board typically does when they've got a shortfall over here. They borrow from this building fund to supplement this building fund that may have a cost overrun that's not been accounted for. That's all going on. That's exactly right.
So what's the breakout in?
Commissioner Irvin?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman. In Building 5, what's the breakout? How is that? It's fully DARPA, but there's only, to follow up on Commissioner Dodd's question, there would only be, 4.4 left? So that's where Del Webb is. Is that the number roughly that's being used of DARPA money that's being used in number 5?
Well, remember, the original estimate for the ARPA funds was $36 million, if I'm not mistaken. Each building was going to cost $7.2. So obviously, we're right there at $36 million. It's $7.2 million a building. What we found is, in that number, so that number is what allocated to each one of the first 5. That would be Rockvale, Kittrell, Las Casas, Walter Hill, and then Christiana. Christiana is number 5. And so what we found with Las Casas and Walter Hill, that those bids came in, because they're bid separately. They're not all bid at once. They're bid separately, because a bid only lasts, Commissioner Dodd, it's only 30 days, right? So they last 30 days, and so the bids just came in. Each one of the bids for Las Casas to Walter Hill came in at 1.3 to 1.4 over the 7.2, okay, which was originally allocated for Las Casas and Walter Hill. So instead of taking that 1.3, 1.4 out of Christiana, okay, and starving that building, what we said was, let's take that out of Del Webb, which is Rutherford County money, and then supplement it there. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, the numbers I've heard is 7.2 Kittrell, 7.3 Rockvale. I've heard 8 for Walter Hill, 8.5 for Las Casas. That's 30.
And the 8 and the 8.5, Commissioner, are revised numbers. But originally, these were all budgeted at 7.2 apiece. Okay, so we've got revised numbers, and of course, the revisions reflect the cost of inflation, labor, and other problems that challenges that we've had. So instead of basically canceling the Christiana project, we've said, let's not do that. Let's take the Del Webb money that was allocated from the general fund, like Commissioner Dodd was talking about, and roll that back into Las Casas and Walter Hill. And then we believe that we'll have to do the same after talking to Mr. Smith earlier this evening. We're going to have to do the same for Christiana. So we fully expect another 1.3, 1.4 is going to come out of Del Webb into Christiana to finish it. So that's going to leave us with only about $3 million left to finish Del Webb, which means we're going to have to come up with $5 million to finish $5 or $6 million, because it may be $9 million by the time we get to 2025. So now we're going to have to come up with $5 million to finish Del Webb. So that's the out-of-pocket expense that we're talking to get this done. It's approximately $5 million. Okay. And those are very rough numbers, gentlemen and ladies.
And I'm happy to accept rough numbers.
I'm sorry?
I'm happy to accept rough numbers. I'm just, at this point, I'm just trying to get a sense. And then, what's the timing? You said Del Webb is out about 4 years.
No, sir. I did not say 4 years. I
misunderstood then.
No, that's right. Obviously, we want to bring these online as fast as possible. I think we're looking at Del Webb 24, 25. But I would be hard-pressed to think it would be further than that. And there may be an opportunity, quite honestly, after talking to Michael Smith, that we could roll that in at approximately the same time we bring Christiana online. There may be an opportunity to do that, which would be great.
Do you have the timing for the other? I mean, Rockvale is online very quickly.
Rockvale and Kittrell are soon to be completed in the next 3 to 4 months. Rockvale here in the next 3 months. I would say Kittrell in the next 4 to 5 out on the outside, and we expect to begin construction on Las Casas and Walter Hill in the next 90 days. And then after we get going on that, then I expect to come back before this body for approval for Christiana and Del Webb. Certainly within the next budget year, the following budget year, by no later than 23, 24.
And it's very important on Walter Hill that we get started on it. If you remember the last rain we had, the flooding and all of that, they were in a situation of their septic system bubbling on. So we have, prior to recent, we've had to move them out of their fire station and monk in with the city at their fire station until we could get a Band-Aid fix on that. Well, this time we got close. We got close, just like at your house. When the septic tank don't work, you tell everybody in the house, don't flush right now. So we've got that same system out there and those problems there. So it's important that that station gets going here too pretty soon.
And in terms of ongoing costs, if I could ask, the volunteer versus the regular emergency systems, not quite property management per se, but if you could kind of address the volunteer versus non-volunteer service aspect.
So I'm glad you asked, because we're kind of regurgitating something that happened the other night in public safety, which was very important to my office. I made the assumption, this will take just a minute, Commissioner, if you don't mind. I made the assumption, and in the infamous words of G. Gordon Liddy, every gratuitous assumption is just as easily and gratuitously denied, right? So I made a gratuitous assumption that because this body, the county commission, determined that they were going to move forward with 6 public safety buildings that would include fire EMS service out of those buildings, that this county was making the proactive step, the very definitive step, saying, while the volunteer service that has rendered it to this community has been invaluable over time, and it indeed has, it's been absolutely splendid, that the growth of this community, the demands of this community necessitated that we move to a full-time firefighting EMS service, and that was part of the justifications of these public service buildings. And Commissioner Reed is absolutely right. That's not all these public safety health buildings are going to do, but it's a significant part of why they're there. And so I made the assumption that that was the direction we're going in. But then in the course of that, I got conversation from some commissioners, well-informed, well-intentioned, but that believed that even though we were moving forward with this $40 million investment into public safety, we could do this with a volunteer firefighting service. Well, that didn't line up with what I understood. So I asked Commissioner Reed, Chairman Reed, if he would bring back before public safety a definitive discussion on the vision and the goal of public safety with regard to first responders and the need for a professional firefighting service. He agreed. That was at my request. And so we had that discussion. When? Monday night. The days are running together. Thank you, Commissioner. Monday night, and that body voted 6-0 to affirm the need to move this county toward a professional firefighting service. And so that decision now, I believe, will go to the full commission for a debate. But I think it's very, very important. As a matter of fact, I think it's critical that to have that discussion and debate. And indeed, I would argue it would probably have been more appropriate to have it before the funding of those public safety buildings instead of afterwards. But it's never too late, because it defines the vision that so much of us are talking about and have talked about the last 12 to 18 months. As a matter of fact, as I recall, some of you ran on the idea of creating a vision for this county, and that's an integral part of establishing that vision. So I'm excited about the county commission coming together saying, this is our vision, this is in part how we're going to execute this vision to take care of the fastest growing county in Tennessee. And so however it comes out on the next county commission meeting, I'm excited about the unity of this body saying, this is our vision, this is how we're going to execute that vision. So that was where that came from. Didn't mean to be so long-winded.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Reed.
Any other questions? Commissioner Johnson?
Correct me if I'm wrong, because there's been a lot of discussion here. What I understood the original question to be was, are these funded with ARPA money, completely funded? And during the discussion, what I've heard is, no, all 5 of them are not fully funded. They're fully funded, but not all from ARPA free money. It's being subsidized with our other building, our 6th building. We're taking part of it with general fund, unless I misunderstood. Anyway, we're taking tax money and supplementing the other 5 because they came in over budget. So if I'm wrong, forgive me, but that's what I was understanding was, are they fully funded with free money, basically? And no, they're not, but they're fully funded, and that's good.
Mr. Irvin?
Oh, I'm trying to, exactly the question, I'm not sure. My understanding from listening to the discussion is, yes, they are fully funded. Again, I don't have the records or background research. I'm listening to what everyone is saying in this meeting, but basically it's funded through DARPA up to the 36 million or whatever number it is, and then beyond that point, it's essentially borrowed from the general fund, which was going to fund the Del Webb piece.
So we have, let me get to the net. $36 million of ARPA money or free money. I hate that word. There's no such thing as free money, gentlemen. Let's not use free money. There's somebody, those are our tax dollars. They just happen to come back from Washington, thank God, right?
Somebody else
But they're not, yeah, but anyway, it's not free money, it's ARPA money. And the ARPA grant money, we got $64 million. We took 36 of that, and we pledged to, and it was approved through the federal grant, that we would build 5 public safety health buildings for $36 million. So now we have those the next 2 buildings, buildings 3 and 4, are coming in over budget. We could either scratch the 5th building, or we could take money from the 6th building, which we're paying for, which is correct, and we could roll that in and supplement it with our funding, with the ARPA funding, to get buildings 3 and 4 built, which I thought was a better way to approach this so we could get all 6 built. But the $36 million is the ARPA, and instead of being $36 million, it's now going to be, the total funding will probably be closer to $42 million. So that $6 million to get the first 5 built will come out of this general fund. Commissioner Dodge.
Chairman, so, and all that's correct, but we approved funding the buildings with $36 million, and that we divided that money by the number of buildings we thought we could build. Those buildings were going to be from federal money, no local contribution. Now we're probably going to be investing $10 million in what was heretofore no local contribution. So I'm a little distressed that my vote for yes on building 6 buildings was that was federal money. That prompted the concept. It's been a long mission for Commissioner Reed, and he's been a champion for the cause. And that money spurred the chairman to jump into this wholeheartedly. But the funding does not meet the number of buildings we have, so we're going to just add our local money to it. It's just a little frustrating that the federal money prompted the number of buildings. That was, we have this much money, let's build this many buildings. Now we're committed to this many buildings without the money. So which happened first? And furthermore, the question was asked at the time, are we going to staff all 6 buildings immediately? And it was a no. The answer was no.
So
so now that we've committed to the 6th building, we're going to add $10 million of local money, and we're going to ramp up our salaries because we have the buildings. So it's just a little frustrating.
Well, it's
and
a whole
I agree
lot.
we want to get there, and I admire the chairman for getting us here. But some of these elements, we're adding money and we're adding people way ahead of what we were pledged to get the yes votes.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I want to address that. You're exactly correct. It's extremely frustrating to me to inherit a plan that is absolutely laudable and notable in every way, that meets the demands of the growth of this county. And I'm going to be candid here. I find it a little frustrating that I'm having to work to fix a problem when there was no latitude in the estimation of the building of these public safety health buildings. There was no latitude for inflation at all. It was $7.2 million per building, $36 million. That's what was allocated for 5 buildings. And yet there was no wiggle room for inflation at all. I don't understand that. Now, but I wasn't a part of the process. So I've inherited something, and we're gonna make lemonade. And you're right, it is frustrating to say, you mean we got to step in and we got to supplement the ARPA building, the current 5 public safety buildings with Rutherford County funds to get them finished, to get them across the finish line. And the answer is, if that's what we want to do, if we want to get these buildings across the finish line, that's exactly what it'll take. And I'm sorry, But that's what we're going to have to deal with. Now, having said that, the decision hadn't been made. That's coming before the full commission at the next commission meeting. And I fully expect that we will have a vigorous debate on that. And honestly, one needs to be had. It really does. But at the end of the day, despite the lemons we were given, I think the opportunity outweighs the fact that we may have to step in with an extra $6 million to get these delivered. But that's one man's opinion. But you're correct. It's frustrating.
Any other questions?
If I can just add to that a little
Go
bit. This money that we've got from the federal government, and you can call it COVID money or whatever you want to call it, but that money that we're getting from the federal government is money that the commission at the time had to budget or lose. And that's where all of these figures came from. We had to budget that stuff or lose it. And not being, I guess, foresighted enough to see what the economy was going to be doing over the next couple of years, it is a little bit frustrating. But just think of it from a different perspective. We're getting 6 buildings for less than $10 million. Okay, what a deal! And that's the way I think we as a governing body need to look at this. Okay, and we're at the point now to where we're going to be faced with this type of planning in the future as well. And I think we'll learn as we go along in this process. But if you can just think of it, that we're getting these buildings, state-of-the-art buildings, for less than $10 million of taxpayers' money. And that's a great deal. Every time we build a school, it comes directly out of our pockets, the taxpayers' pockets. This is something that's a little different than that, and that's the reason that it's a good deal. And just like the schools, we can build the schools, we can borrow the money to build the schools, but to staff those schools is something that reoccurs every year. And it's similar to what we're talking about here. The volunteer fire departments can't issue enough accolades as to what they've meant to this county through the years. But I think it was 2006, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony, you might remember, but it was 2006 when we started the process of full-time firefighters and emergency responders. And it was the intent way back in those days to work toward full-time. What Mayor Carr asked us to do was to commit to that. That doesn't mean that there's still not a place for volunteer fire departments. And as long as those volunteers are there, we'll continue to use those. They've got the equipment. But what we're experiencing right now, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Reed, is that volunteers are not volunteering. And we don't have those volunteers to staff some of our volunteer fire departments, so they're not able to respond to emergencies the way that they should. This is also pushing us toward our own emergency responders and firefighters. So there's a whole lot of things that are going on in this particular situation. But if we can kind of get through all of this, we've got the funding scheduled for that 6th building, and we're borrowing money from that 6th building to finish, if I'm not mistaken, it's Christiana. Is that the one, the 5th building? So we're borrowing from Del Webb to finish Christiana, and not delaying that. The funding will be there. We'll just have to decide where that funding comes from. And the mayor is working really hard, and some of the commissioners are working really hard to come up with that plan. The next 6 months are critical to this county as to the potential revenue that are coming that could be available to us. Work hard. And that's hopefully something that will work out and where some of these additional funds will come from. Not additional taxes, but additional opportunities for revenue to be generated. Not taxes, but additional revenue. Does that make sense?
Go ahead, Commissioner Reed.
Commissioner Dodd, you've been with us all the way through this and worked with us and asked us a lot of good questions. All I ask now is just hold what you got until we've got the Budget Committee is going to meet on this the first week in January. The motion that was made here Monday night is headed to them. It goes to them first on exactly what we're talking about right here. You'll get your exact figures there. In fact, the motion we made was the motion that they asked us to do. They sent it back to us to discuss it, just as you've done right here. Where do we go from here and how do we do that? I just have to keep thinking we're going to end up, just as Commissioner Phillips said, we're going to end up with 6 state-of-the-art structures out here that's going to cost less than one addition to one of our school buildings. But yet we're putting something in we have never done in Rutherford County. We haven't built these out here. We've had volunteer firemen in pole barns. The station we've got right now out here in Walter Hill is a pole barn. That's why it's bubbling right now. That's a pole barn. Now we're going to actually have something, I don't know if y'all read this today or not, but we're looking nationwide. We're the number 3 in the nation for the fastest growth. And it's not all growing downtown Murfreesboro. It's catching us out here too. So these people, when they come here, they're expecting, I get calls every day wanting to know when their street lights are going in. I don't know about you, of course some of you are not out here in the rural area, but I get somebody, it's dark out here. And I have to tell them, I said, well, you ain't got any street lights unless you know Middle Tennessee Electric and call them to put you a security light out. But yet they also want some of these other things we have here. And I think that if we're going to be number 3 in the nation as far as something, I think we need to, I like to be recognized for what we're doing for the people out here. But I'm just asking you, I know what we're looking at tonight, and as Commissioner Irwin was told, these are rough numbers. And we wouldn't build a barn on rough numbers. We got to measure twice and cut once, and that's what we're doing. And that's all I ask you to do. But we're just trying to give you the information you want.
Let me make one statement. I think I had talked to Commissioner Irvin that the Property Management Committee approved 6 buildings. Send it on to budget. Did let it get out of hand tonight discussing figures. Do not have a finance director here, and figures normally is discussed in budget committee. Remember that, commissioners. Now, if you want to start discussing budget and property management, then I'm going to have to get the source here to answer those questions. I don't think the mayor can come up with precise figures. I don't think nobody can come up with precise figures. If we're going to start discussing it here, I'll start asking the finance director to be with us. But figures are discussed in budget. As far as it coming back to this committee, we have already approved. We've done our job. We've approved the 6 buildings and send it on. Send it on the budget. So therefore, we had a discussion of budget tonight, but basically this is the wrong committee to be discussing budget because we had no idea or no knowledge of what budget was going to do Monday night, not property management. If they said they sending it back to property management, then most definitely we'd have had a finance director here. But they did not. Budget, they decided to send it back to public safety. So therefore, if we got any more questions on the budget of these buildings, I will try to get a report to present to you at the next meeting, if you so desire. But just remember, figures, budget committee. Now.
Thank you, Chairman. And so, 2 things. I think it's ironic The one time the finance director tonight before the meeting asked me if his presence was needed, I said, I don't think so. I can't imagine what we're going to talk about that will require your presence, so I will never make that mistake again. Exactly. Number two, our finance director is actually viewing the proceedings tonight, and he has sent me a text, and with the chairman's permission, I would like to read the text, because I did get it a little bit wrong, and getting it right is certainly more important than anything else. And so, with your permission, I'm going to read the text, if that's okay. It's brief, but it's on point. Michael Smith texts me, no local money is being used on the first 5. That would be the first 5 public safety buildings we've talked about. And that would be Rockvale, Kittrell, Las Casas, Walter Hill, and Christiana. No local money is being used on the first 5. The Del Webb money we are moving was ARPA revenue loss money that flowed through the general fund. And that's, gentlemen and ladies, is where I made the mistake. It was flowing through the general fund, not coming from the general fund. And that is a very important distinction. And I think it goes to your point, Commissioner Dodd. But no local dollars. He can have everything available to us at the next budget meeting, which goes to Chairman McAdoo's point, that these are budgeted. But so my apologies for not getting it exactly right, but to point, details do matter, and I recognize that. So thank you.
That's Commissioner Johnson.
I'd just like to reassure everyone, I wasn't asking the question that I asked to stall this in any way. It's good. You know, the whole idea is a very good idea. But the question was brought up about basically the funding of it, and I heard it 2 different ways. That's why I was trying to clarify for the people that are watching or that will read it somewhere, or heaven forbid it be on the news, local, you know, national news, but I just wanted it simplified, and our mayor reading this text clarified it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments, statements? If not, let's proceed on with City Plaza and 319 North Maple structural studies.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're talking about City Plaza and 319 North Maple structural studies. So I am in discussions, with the City of Murfreesboro's management staff and the mayor, and I think there may be some opportunities for Rutherford County away from the City Plaza and the problems and the challenges it produces for the county that remove it from any serious consideration with regard to doing any type of engineering study. It would not be my recommendation that we do an engineering study at the City Plaza at this time. With regard to 319 North Maple structural studies, we can certainly undertake to do that, but I think it may be premature given the fact that we haven't even completed the one-stop, and I think that needs to be our focus and of our attention, completing the one-stop. Then at that time, once one-stop is completed and we find that that additional space is not relieving the overcrowding situation that Ms. Crowell and others may have over there, then we can certainly address that. But I don't believe either one of these two right now would be best suited for the county as far as a structural study. So if you're asking for my recommendation, I would wait at 319 North Maple, and I don't know that I would do a structural study at the City Plaza.
Discussion? Commissioner Dodd?
Do we need to make a motion to that effect? Did it come out of PBA and has it, or, because I agree with you, and if we need to take no further action, or if I'll make a motion to.
So let me tell you where this came from. This came from a conversation, thank you for that question, Commissioner Dodd. This came from a conversation within PBA about the Goldstein renovation, and then what other options were available to the county if the Goldstein renovation found to be too expensive with regard to what was being proposed. And so the architect engineer started laying out these other different scenarios. So in the course of that conversation, the City Plaza came up, that there need to be an engineering study there because it was been built how many years ago? 25, 30 years ago? It's been a short while. And so because of the age of that garage and the fact that we've got an odd-shaped piece of property, Rutherford County does, on the corner there, that may be an option. And then in the course of that conversation, I'm not even sure how a structural study of North Maple came up, but then North Maple came up. And so it kind of all got bundled into the potential renovation at the Goldstein building. And quite honestly, I think right now, if we're going to renovate the Goldstein building, we need to find out what the cost of renovating that is, and we need to focus on that. I think we got too many distractions, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I would ask that I'm sorry, may I, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would ask that we postpone any consideration for doing structural studies on these two buildings unless a need arises to do so. And currently on the Goldstein, am I correct that we have an architect interviewing the stakeholders there now and is putting together a potential plan for a remodel that could provide if not a full bid set of plans, a good set of plans to get some decent estimates. Then we take action. Maybe we do a study or maybe we decide on the Goldstein building when we get those plans back and an estimate, correct? So, I would say no action on structural studies, and can we wait for the report from Goldstein before we discuss what we might do at Goldstein?
I think that would be the prudent thing to do.
Any other? Commissioner Johnson?
That was a motion.
I'm not sure what's the appropriate action, Commissioner Johnson. Have we been asked to hire an engineer by a party?
Mr. Chairman, I think the request would be a motion to not proceed with a structural study at the City Plaza and delay indefinitely a structural study at 319 North Maple. That would be what I would recommend.
I make a motion to not do a structural study on the 319 North Maple at this time.
No, sir. Delay, not do a structural study at City Plaza. Delay a structural study at 319 North Maple.
If we want to do one, I would rather somebody make a motion to do so in the future. So now I'm saying I would make a motion to do no structural study at 319 and no structural study at City Plaza.
Got a motion? Do I hear a second?
So this motion is saying to never do it?
No, just not. If someone made a motion to do so after we look at Goldstein, then we would I would suggest we need to make the motion to do so. So this is just no study at this time, however we need to say it.
Second.
Got a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Wilson? Irvin? Davis? Boyd? Everyone understand the motion. So, call the roll. Go ahead, Commissioner Irvin.
We are basically saying, not at this point, we're not going to do any structural studies.
That's my intention.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Want to understand, call the roll.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Chairman McAdoo.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Johnson?
I have a question about the plaza, though. When that building was built, went in with the city to build underground parking for the city and the county to use. We put, for lack of better words, foundation or structure in the ground to go up with the building. Okay, so that's a moot point right now. But what is not a moot point is, unless it's changed since I was up here before, we're still on the hook for the maintenance of that plaza when we have to replace the membrane that stops the rainwater from going through to the garage. That was intended to be a city, county garage for all of us to use. It was intended, and I think the arms are even there, for people paying to park there, and there'd be revenue coming back in, but it was for city and county. It turned out it was basically all city. I know not completely, but majority is city. City filled it up. I know once we have had to remove all the landscaping and redo the membrane and put the landscaping back after the landscaping was taken somewhere else in the city. I would like to see us revisit that, and if it's a possibility that we get off the hook for the maintenance of that building, because it's not a county building. And I know Murfreesboro citizens are Rutherford County citizens also, but it was very misleading when we did that, and I still have a bad feeling. And just about everybody I talk to, I know in my district or our whole end of the county has the same feeling. We're paying for something that we're not getting anything out of, really.
Commissioner Dodd?
Thank you. One last comment of clarification since we made this vote. If at any time Mr. Dodd or anybody suggests that there's leaks and we need to test membranes and we get presented a complaint or a concern and we're on the hook to pay, I'll be the first one to ask for a structural study. But nothing's been presented for us to consider. So in the future, if we need to do a study, if we need to readdress that, I'll support you 100%.
So Mr. Chairman, I want to make something very clear. The purpose of the structural study was not to ascertain the membrane and the state of the condition of the Plaza City. The purpose of the structural study was when that parking garage was built, it was initially built so that a superstructure of up to 5 stories could be built on top of it. Because of the age of it and because state standards for construction a commercial building of that size have changed, we now believe, and Adam may be able to help us on this, we believe now that structurally it won't hold a 5 based on current code standards, it'll only be a 3. And so they were going to have to go in there and actually do a structural study of the pillars and the beams and of this whole supporting superstructure. It had nothing to do with whether or not a membrane leaked at one time or not, or the landscaping. It had to do with the county's right and ability to build a administrative office building at that location. And so it it wasn't a plausible solution with regard to the conversation we were having about the Goldstein renovation. That's the point. And so it didn't make sense for the mayor's office to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a structural study that it wasn't going to take advantage of. And that's what this is. That does not mean that we can't revisit this at some later date. Quite the contrary. We have the ability, when given new facts or a better understanding of the current facts, to change our mind. And that's what may happen, but not tonight.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pretty well spoken, and I try to speak clearly. I don't use a lot of big words, probably because I don't know many, but I do know what I'm saying, and I get my point across. At least I always thought I did. There seems to be a problem with getting my point across here. I said in the beginning, the Plaza was a moot point. This is a different subject, but it comes up under this same bullet here, number 5, City Plaza. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about building the building now. I'm talking about, I'm sick and tired of the maintenance contract we have of that plaza. We shouldn't have that. And if there's any way to get out of it, like I just said plainly, if there's any way we can get out of that, we need to do it, in my opinion. I was here when we did that. I didn't feel good about it then, and I sure don't feel good about it now. Because over the years, I've seen that we didn't get our money's worth.
Adam, do you want to add anything to this? What I would do, if you want to see about getting out of it, first of all, I probably will consult the county attorney and come back to this committee with the contract, the agreement that we have with the city of Murfreesboro. And also, I will ask the county attorney, is there any way that we can get out of it, per se? And I'll give him time to study it and bring it back next meeting. Okay. Next on the agenda, CCRC discussion. Last month, we had a discussion on the nursing home, and we were going to get some information back from the board at the nursing home. I see Commissioner Johnson back there. Do you have information to bring us from the nursing home board?
As the mayor is very much aware, we have some problems at the community care, and I believe that they're being approached and taken care of to the best of our ability. But I agree with you, Mayor. We have an obligation, and the vulnerable people that are involved there, we need to have a little bit more compassion and a little bit more understanding. And I just cannot fathom the commission backing off from the obligation that we owe to some of the elderly people in this county. And I know, speaking from my heart, seeing the people out there, and Mayor, you've seen them too, and I just would not feel comfortable in trying to do anything drastic with the community care out there at this point.
Commissioner, thank you for that. You're exactly correct. There are some things that have come up recently that the attorney for community care, Evan Cope, is addressing. Nothing significant that this body that would affect this body, this particular committee, but I've asked until these issues internal issues get addressed by United Healthcare, community care, that we kind of push to the back burner the child care services that was being proposed. It doesn't mean that we're not going to proceed with that, but we just got some things that we need to take care of that have come up in the last 30 days that require our immediate attention. And so I spoke to the new director. There's not the director at Community Care, but the director that's based out of corporate today, and they're flying in the first of the month, and I'll be meeting with them to get to know them. There's been a reshuffling inside the corporation, which has facilitated some of this. So it's nothing to be concerned about. It's just something that that happens from time to time in corporate America. So there's been a little bit of restructuring, and it affects the administrator's direct boss. He's resigning effective January 1. It's not a big deal. I was introduced to their replacement today, I believe, Linda Daly. And so I had a nice conversation with her today for about 15 minutes. She'll be flying in or driving down with some of her people, I think the 5th or 6th of January. And she will be at the next board meeting, Mr. Johnson, of which I'm sure you'll be attending, so you'll get to meet them like I do. And so there's nothing particular to report with regard to the proposed expansion and refurbishing of the child care facility tonight, Mr. Chairman. I would expect more information maybe at our next meeting.
Okay, I guess it would be okay if any member of this committee would like to attend that.
Well, I'm the chairman of that committee, so I guess I get to make a command decision. So let me just put forth an invitation to anybody in this committee that would like to attend. You're more than welcome. If you would notify the mayor's office that you would like to attend, I'll make sure that you have a seat at the table because we have lunch.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I originally brought up the discussion on community care, and all I keep hearing is people saying cold-hearted, wanting to kick the vulnerable people out, not let them have the service they deserve, and all these other things. I've done nothing to cause that feedback to me. Like I said a while ago, I'm plain spoken. I plainly spoke on this, and it was, why are we in the business? We can provide the same services, possibly, without us being in the business. We wouldn't be kicking anybody out of the nursing home. I'm just saying, discuss it. That's what we're up here for, is to take care of business. That's how you take care of business, is discuss the issues. This is one of our issues. There's land out there that we're not utilizing for the nursing home. It may be floodplain, I don't know, but that's part of discussion. There are many questions that could come up that's got nothing to do with closing down the nursing home. I've said from the beginning, that's not what I'm saying we need to do. And I'm saying no matter what we would do, it may just be leave it alone, but not without discussion. We discuss what we can do out there to possibly get us out of the nursing home business, and still the same services are provided to these people. They have no disruption. It's just a change in not our obligation. We can fulfill that obligation, but by, and there again, I know I'll be bashed for this because I say, well, you're closing it down. No, I'm saying there's a possibility, and I don't have all the ideas, but I'm throwing it out here to get ideas from everyone else. There's a possibility we could sell it to somebody that's in the business and would provide the same services, but we would never have a cost out there again. That's all I'm saying. I think that was pretty plain. I'm not cold-hearted. My mother was in the nursing home. My aunt was in a nursing home. Many others in my family have been in nursing homes. Not that one, but they have been in nursing homes. I know what goes on and the feelings. Thank you.
Okay. Based on Commissioner Johnson's statement, that the lawyers up here, I myself like us to start at square one. Square one would be if you're going to have a discussion with the new owners, operators, or whatever, with the board at Community Care. Why can't we present these questions to Community Care Board? I think we should start there first, myself, before we start trying to summarize it or make a decision on property management. Now, to get this information from the Board of Community Care, we can send a formal recommendation or statement or whatever of the question that you asked and ask them, can they send us some information on that?
So, I, for one, think there's not a single question or issue or function of government that cannot be openly discussed in this committee or any other committee for that matter, period. It doesn't matter how long this county's been rendering a service to a particular group or to the county as a whole. There's nothing that we transparently cannot discuss. There's nothing off limits. And if there is something off limits, then I want to know what it is and why it is. So I agree with Commissioner Johnson completely that if it's a service that we're providing a segment of our community, we absolutely have an obligation to discuss it and with vigorous debate and potentially disagreement, which is fine. That is more than fine. And so if there is a jurisdictional issue within the county commission, though, legitimately, with regard to community care, does a debate about the role of community care and its ongoing service to the community and how the Rutherford County government functions within that, does it belong in this particular committee or does it belong in health and ed? And I think Chairman Dodd has brought that before this once before, raising the issue. Where does that discussion and debate take place? It doesn't matter to me where it takes place, but if it needs to take place, I'll be glad as the chairman of the board to bring the necessary resources to the appropriate committee so that you can have those questions asked. I know that you asked some questions once before, so we've done this once before with regard to facilities. But if there are some overarching questions with regard to does the county want to be involved in elderly health care? Because that's what we're asking. Elderly health care. If that's, do we want to have that discussion, then I think it's appropriate to make the determination about where that discussion takes place. And then you can certainly notify the chairman of the CCRC board, which happens to be the mayor, and I will pull together resources to get you the correct answers so this body can make the right determination.
Commissioner Dodd?
I think that the Health and Ed Committee would be the most appropriate committee to look at contracts and leases. That's just me at this moment contemplating that, Chairman McAdoo, because the board, the chairman of the board reports to Health and Ed, and the minutes are a component of Health and Ed. So it may be something that we take up and get to the bottom of the lease. So I think the groundwork is laid. Attorneys are looking at leases and contracts, and if we perhaps tonight we suggest that conversation move to Health and Ed until there's a property concern, of course, it comes back here. I'm open to that. Vice Chair's open to that if y'all think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Johnson?
I agree 100%. The reason it came up here was because of the maintenance. That's our job, is to manage the property. That includes the maintenance. We put over $200,000 on a roof just recently. That's what stirred this up. And that's why it came to this committee. I want it to be an appropriate committee. It started here, now let's move it to Health and Ed, and I would make that motion to, I don't believe you made the motion, did you?
Really don't need a motion.
Okay, well, I just asked for it to go to
Health and Ed, I
Health
don't
and Ed
see no
then.
reason we need a motion because nursing homes, they report to Health and Ed.
Right.
Well,
It just needs to be put on the agenda is what I'm saying.
Yeah, put it on the agenda, Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say I do agree with Health and Ed Chairman Dodd here, and listening to Vice Chairman Johnson here. I think Health and Ed is the right place for the next question, because it is moving beyond a property maintenance question now. And I hear the question being asked is the idea of being in the business at all. And I believe it absolutely is appropriate, and I do support that Health and Ed should be the right committee with that next phase of discussion, because the CCRC does report to Health and Ed. So I just wanted to support that as well.
Any other committee member? Discussion on it? Okay, so Chairman Dodd, it will be on your next agenda.
January 24th at 6 p.m., one of the bullets under CCR will be taking up the conversation of lease and contract and purpose.
That's satisfactory, Commissioner Johnson? All right, next on the agenda is other business. Any other business to come before this committee tonight?
Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. I don't think I've talked so much in one committee all since I've been here. Merry Christmas, gentlemen. I'm going to be real quick. So we've had a couple of cost overruns with regard to One Stop and ARPA. One Stop and a couple of one of the public safety health buildings. And what we have found is the number, and I've talked to the PBA, Public Building Authority Chairman, which is Stan Vaught. I've talked to a couple of the commissioners. Is that me?
It's a car outside.
Oh.
There's a lot going on.
Excuse me. And so what I want this committee to think about, I do not want to discuss it tonight. Everybody's ready to go home. I am too. But what I want this committee to think about, because this conversation would originate here, and I've talked to Chairman McAdoo about this, I want you to think about for January the idea with all the different construction projects that Rutherford County has and potentially will have in the next 2 to 3 years. And because of our growth, that we consider the idea of hiring a project engineering manager that directly oversees the construction of new projects or major renovations. And so I just want to put the idea out there. I don't want to discuss it tonight, but I want us to think about it and see if there's some financial advantage to the county in doing this, both in expedited construction costs and keeping costs, getting projects to come in on time and on budget. And I know there are a couple of members here that have expertise in this, and I would be particularly glad to hear from Chairman Dodd in this regard. This is your field of expertise in some regard, and maybe some others on the commission. But I present that to you because I'm concerned about the bandwidth that's available to the PBA that only meets once a month, and the oversight of some of the larger projects like a transfer station, like some of the other things, the potential Goldstein building, and some other things we have coming online. So that's what Chairman McAdoo was referring to. So with your permission, we can take that up in a more specific discussion at our next meeting, Mr. Chairman.
We will have it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Still under other business?
Yeah.
I'd just like to say with this cold weather coming up, please, everyone here or anyone watching, and spread the word, don't leave the pets out in this cold weather. This is severe cold weather that's coming, and this is probably a health and ed issue, but I don't care. You know, I'm going to say it tonight. Please take your pets in. Take care of them. Be responsible owners. Thank you. And Merry Christmas.
That's a good statement. Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. Just one quick comment. I wanted to thank Adam Dodd for the wonderful tours that you're giving us on the buildings. Your time's appreciated. Thank you for that. We're learning a ton about each of the buildings, and I love that we're doing that. Also, our county clerk, Lisa Crowell, thank you so much for just talking today with us about everything going on in your office. Every time we take that little bit of time before a meeting, we're all learning a ton. So thank you all for that, and I would love to continue that into next year.
Thank you. We will continue it, no doubt, but I think next month is in a new year, so we may not have a tour at our next meeting. Let everybody get back from the holidays and set up, and we'll discuss our next tour at the next meeting. Any other discussion? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.